I will never leave that woman. Jason, that is not a quote from Kevin Costner in the major motion picture, The Bodyguard. That is Kevin McCarthy talking about a colleague. What do we do with that?
It's one thing to say, that's my work wife, right? And it's something else when you have Stockholm syndrome. That's what we have here. This guy's been beat down by the far right in his own party for so long that he's convinced himself that he's in love with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, look, I make no judgment on who people fall in love with, but if you want to be in love with a terrorist sympathizer, that speaks volumes about whether or not you should be equipped to be potentially third in line to leave this country in case of a tragedy. I don't really care objectively if they're best friends, if they're BFFs, if they're in their top five. I don't care. What concerns me is any degree to which people who have committed themselves to the violent overthrow of our government are in any shape, way, or form normalized by the elected leadership of our government. I don't care if that's Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, or hundreds of other Republicans who voted to not verify the 2020 election. So whether or not McCarthy has a particularly special relationship with Marjorie Taylor Greene speaks to the fact that I have been saying for years that you don't have a Republican Party. You have a dime store front for a terrorist organization. And this is just the public attempt to wash that relationship and pretend that they are running a party under the guise of this brand new BFF love relationship that they have, because McCarthy has no spine and no love for this country.
And let's be clear, we are not implying there's any sort of romantic entanglement whatsoever. Just to make that clear. Oh, Stuart, I do want to ask about the New York Times reporting, because they say McCarthy is going out of his way to embrace the far right because he thinks John Boehner and Paul Ryan made a mistake by isolating them. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you know, this, as much as I hate to admit it, what you just said about the Republican Party is right. What killed me about this coverage of when he was coming down to the wire trying to get, you know, this embarrassing episodes of vote after vote where he couldn't get it, it was often described as sort of the normal Republican Party versus the crazies. And the normal were Kevin McCarthy and this whack job, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, there is no normal Republican Party that has any meaning, and we have to accept that. And for some of us who worked in the party, that's not the easiest thing to admit. But we're the ones who helped create this, and we're the ones who are responsible for it. And we have to look at it for what it is, and we can't pretend that there's some reversion to normalcy that's going to occur here. The Republican Party is what it wants to be. And what it wants to be is an ongoing danger to democracy in our country. And I don't know how it could be any clearer. They support a guy. None of them will say, or very few of them will say, that they won't support Donald Trump if he's the nominee next time. So you're saying that you'll support a guy if he's the nominee of my party who tried to overthrow the government of the United States, who was supported by Putin. I mean, what else, what other test is there to fail as kind of basic patriotism, putting the country first test?
His political career that's supported by Putin, his business career that was run by a chief financial officer who's currently sitting in Rikers Island. Jason, McCarthy promised to keep some Democrats off of committees after Greene was kicked off committees in the last Congress. Today, Hakeem Jeffries named Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell to Intel anyway, and McCarthy didn't name them, but he said Democrats use committees to target their opponents, and that ends with the new majority. What do you think that means?
It means McCarthy has no spine, he's a liar, and he doesn't care about the safety of the country. Look, Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene were kicked off of committees in 2021 because they support terrorism. We can't pretend that's not the case. They support terrorism. They supported the men and women who stormed the Capitol and tried to kill their colleagues. If there's any reason to kick you out of the club, it should be trying to murder other people in the club, or at least providing aid and comfort to the people trying to murder other people in the club. There is no legitimate reason to keep Schiff or Swalwell off the Intelligence Committee. In fact, if anything, it's to lock out people who are primarily concerned with this country from knowing the dangers that perhaps other colleagues on the committee provide to this country. So it doesn't surprise me. But again, this is just the beginning. These are not serious people. These are not people concerned about running the government. These are people who are primarily engaged in a slow-moving insurrection. And so the idea of petty personal rivalries pales in comparison to the fact that you will now have people who are actively a part of trying to overthrow the government violently having access to high-level security information, which will make their next attack all that much easier to plan.
Well, they may be serious, seriously dangerous. Jason Johnson, Stuart Stevens, thank you both for being here. Coming up, it is only getting scarier this Monday night. He was part of a South Carolina legal dynasty. Now Alex Murdaugh is on the other end of the law. He is on trial for